this is Jenny from Just Being Me, and you're listening to the Learning to Love Yourself podcast, the show that inspires you to put yourself first.
Learning to love yourself on the path to happiness. Learning to love yourself on the path to happiness.
Welcome back to the Learning to Love Yourself podcast. I am Jenny Field, and today I'm with the very lovely Jan Ockendon, who has come to tell us her journey with self-care. Welcome, Jan.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about your journey to finding out that you needed to put more self-care into you.
Oh, it's quite a long journey. So it probably started earlier, but I think probably the first time I was aware of things, really, I came to Leeds. I'm not from Leeds, I'm from the West Coast. So I'm actually from near on the West Coast, not far from Liverpool, actually, kind of between Liverpool and Southport, a little bit inland. But I came over to Leeds, which is nowhere near the seaside, and I realised after a few years that actually I need water. When you look at my astrology chart, I'm a sun sign, so I'm fiery and full of energy and, fiery red as well. Yeah. But I also have two water signs. So my moon sign is Pisces and my rising is Cancer. So I need to be by the water.
Oh.
And I guess really being over here was a bit difficult for me because the other thing was that I was at a really big mental health institution, hospital, I suppose, on the outskirts of Leeds. So we were kind of far out of it, which meant that I could get out into the country, which was nice. But then when I moved in with my husband, we moved and it's a lovely leafy suburb, but it felt enclosed to me.
Oh, okay.
And that made me realise I don't like being enclosed. But we're not far from Roundy, or we weren't far from Roundy Park. So I could walk down there, but it was a bit of a trek. And I worked in various jobs like nursing homes, hospitals and things like that. And I suppose it was then really that I realised that I needed to look after myself a little bit better. I'm really good at taking on other people's energy, which is not a surprise given that, I've worked in a mental health hospital, I'm a mental health nurse, and you do kind of, some people might not be aware of taking on other people's energy, actually. I became really aware of it because I did burn out a couple of times.
I have to say, it's not something that I became aware of until this last journey.
Yeah.
And I'm recognizing that. And the reason why I recognized that was because I also realized that I was rescuing people rather than supporting them as a creator.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference. That makes a big
difference. I think it does. And I think as well, the place where I worked was an old style institution. It had been the West Riding Asylum, I think. So it was really big. It was self-sufficient. It had its own railway line. It had its own farm. You could still see the glass houses where I want to call them patients, but actually I think they probably would have been called inmates at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Grew their own food and all that sort of stuff. So it was an impressive building, but some of it hadn't really moved on since it was built, I guess. Because it's some of the views, some of the energy, some of the ways that people were treated hadn't really moved on that much. So the rescuing did occur quite, I think.
So did you find that you were taking on other people's energies regularly? Because, one of the things that I've learned is the fact that my energy for me is now very, very dominant for me. And if I'm in the room with another person with an energy that I don't want to be with, I am quite capable of not absorbing that energy and walking away from that energy now. But back in the day, I would have struggled.
Yeah. No, I'm with you because I'm quite good at sort of now saying, oh, no, don't need this. Thanks. That's yours.
Yeah.
But yes, then I think I probably did. And I actually walked away from mental health nursing for quite a long time.
Okay.
I went off to work in a nursing home and that was quite different. I mean, it was horrible. It was horrendous. It was not a nice place to work and the regime was really difficult. But I loved the
people.
clients were just, I love working with older people. Absolutely love it. And that was, that was the saving grace, that kind of being with them. So it did make me work with, it made me stay with them, if that makes sense, rather than with
And
people.
it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because we often stay in a job that we don't like doing because of the people that are there.
Yeah.
And did you get to that moment where you thought, actually, I need to do something for me?
Yeah.
And move away from that job? Because that's the recognition, isn't it? That's the moment where we get to that place and go, actually, as much as I want to stay here for everybody else, it's doing nobody any favors by doing this.
It is, yeah. And it was at the point where I was pregnant with my second child. Our eldest she'd been 3, coming up to 3 when I had him. I went off on maternity leave and never went back.
Yeah.
And went from the other to the other end of the spectrum and ended up working as a childminder. It's just great because it meant that I could be silly, I could sit on the floor and do painting and playing. And that made such a difference.
And so, I mean, from the point of view of what we recognize now in this day and age as self-care, was connecting with your inner child, doing all the childlike things and just being able to play like a child. Did that become part of your self-care?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely being able to go out to the park with the kids and walking everywhere as well. I think for a while we didn't have a second car. So being able to just get out there and walk everywhere was fabulous. That was definitely self-care. But obviously with getting the kids out as well.
Is outside for you a huge part of your self-care?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We live right next door to an urban trail. So you can walk more or less very close to Leeds city centre without really going on roads very much.
Oh, wow.
From here, yeah. Yeah, we're not that far away from the airport, so it's not like we're not right on the outskirts, but
that does mean that you can go, because I know that for me, when I think to myself, I'm being identifying as neurodiverse, and sometimes I can feel the overwhelms I'm coming on, is the thing that happens is my husband will hand me the dog's lead and the dog.
Yeah.
And off I go.
Yeah.
Because, that's one of the great things, isn't it? But for working for yourself, you make your own decisions.
Yes.
And I think from a self-care perspective, that does make a huge difference.
Absolutely. It does make a huge difference.
But would you say that it's really important, if you are employed, to diarise in self-care for your day as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you know what? The thing, because I've had a couple of episodes where I've been off sick for a long period of time. And one of those was actually, I'd had a hysterectomy. And it was about a year later, actually. Our third child had gone off to university, and you don't have favourite children, do you? But she was my baby.
The last
until, no, she's not the last one, actually. She's the third. We've got a son as well, a younger son, so he's 15 now. But she had been my baby because there's 9 years between her and him.
Yeah.
So she had been my baby for so long, and I hadn't twigged how much she was my baby. And I think part of that is because we are both 99% sure we've both got ADHD.
Yeah.
And I think I'd carried that for so long that when she went off to university, my head just went, bang, can't cope with this anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with myself. So I ended up off sick for about 5 months. And that's when we got the dog. As I was going back to work, my husband went, let's get a dog, because he'd been made redundant, so he was at home all the time and doing sort of various bits of work from home. So we could have a dog because there was somebody at home all the time. But it also meant that I had something else to sort of focus my kind of, or to help with my self-care and to focus my kind of caring on, because that's really important to me.
Absolutely. As a norm, my dog that is sat next to me whilst I'm working.
Yeah.
At the moment, it's food time, so that is obviously far more important than sitting next to me. I know where I am in the rankings of things. But absolutely, my dog, I don't have children at home. My dog makes me get up and go for the walk. I have to take her for a walk. It is it is something to focus on other than yourself. So if you're struggling to have an animal, and that is why we have service animals, obviously, because,
Yeah.
they're there for the person. And, dogs don't think like humans, they think in the now.
Yeah.
So if you had to describe what you do as self-care each day on a regular day, what would you say that you would always do?
I always get up early. So I'm always up by about 5:30, and I'm out with the dog generally by between 5:15 and 6:30 out in the woods, because there's nobody else there, just me and the dog. And we've got the run of all the woods, the streams. It's full of wildlife. He was trying to chase the squirrels this morning, but he hasn't got a hope in heck of catching them. But there's all sorts. We see foxes, we see deer.
Wow, that's a real light connection, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you're up and out doing your walk.
Yeah. I do.
Non-negotiable, yeah? That's always happens.
Yeah. The other thing that I always do, and I've realized recently, this is what you do. I see a client and then I walk away from my laptop. So mostly I'm seeing clients online at the moment.
Yeah.
I have 1 day a week in the health centre and I can't do it as much then. I leave the room. But what I will do is I will completely walk away and shake off the energy outside. So I'll go outside. We've got a pond outside and we've got newts in the pond. We've had frogs. We get damselflies, and I will just go and stand and stare into.
And would you say that when you're staring into the pond, you're focusing on your be energy, not on your doing energy? Would you say that that's your place to just be?
Yeah, definitely. I'm watching the newts kind of swimming around and just a bit like a dog, being in that kind of now energy of just watching the newts. And actually I've got constant nervous energy and I move constantly. I know I do. And I don't know how my clients are not as irritated as I don't know what, because I know that I've got that energy and I'm constantly shifting about. And I must have been so still last week that a damselfly came and landed in my hair.
Wow.
And I've had that before. They've come and just landed on my hand.
So would you say if you've got a day where things are a bit more hectic than normal and you need to add in, would you say that you do anything extra, or does the things that you do regularly every day hold on to you for those moments?
Sometimes I'll add things in. So anybody who knows me and sees me on social media will know that I do a lot of dancing. So music's really important. So if I'm feeling really kind of that nervous energy's got too much and I can't focus on anything, or if I'm feeling down, I'll put something on. I'll just put I've got an Echo Pop sat behind me and I just put that on, put some music on them, and either dance around or just even sat in the chair, I'll just I have been known to twerk, which is interesting, as we've got 2 massive glass doors over there round in front. So people can watch me if they care to.
So you mentioned, being screen-based, and do you think that self-care is even more important now we are so screen-based in our world? Because, we're looking at our phones constantly all day long. We're, so much, even in the school, so much is based on screens.
Yeah.
Would you say that self-care is even more important to get yourself away from the screen?
Absolutely, definitely. Yeah. And it's not just, for me, it's not just about those things about walking away or, doing the kind of fluffy things like going and having a bath and putting a face pack on and things like that. It's also about boundaries for me and saying no to stuff. So, I've had the situation where I've been told that because I'm employed 22 and a half hours and that I'm not seeing enough people and blah, blah, blah. And I've gone, I'm not seeing any more people in a day.
Mm.
And that's really important to me because I know that if I don't do that, I will burn out.
Yeah.
And I think that's because I did when I was working face to face with people, I would see more people than that. But I think, in a screen time, it's more difficult because I'm a psychotherapist. So it is slightly more difficult to kind of get what you need from the client, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean,
by the screen.
There is a different energy because you feel that, don't you? When you're in the room with somebody, I work intuitively and I look at the language that's given out by body, by, and watching what people do with themselves, you know, how they move themselves. But when you're in the room with somebody, you can get an energy. You can get energy straight away. So you are, when you're working on screen, it is harder.
Yeah.
Harder, you know, to do so. So yes. And you know, as you're working on screen all day long, because, you know, other people are working on screens all day long doing other things as well, you know, it is kind of really important to recognize that you're sat in one position all the time, aren't you?
Yeah. And it's not always the position that's actually going to help your skeleton or your muscular system. How many of us go out and buy a chair that's exactly right for us?
Me.
Well, we're going to do it for me as well.
What's interesting is the fact that actually, you know, if you're employed and you do have problems, you know, physical problems. So I have a bad back and I have a rise and fall desk so I can stand up if I need to. And I have got a chair that is built for me that I can move into the positions that I need to move into, because being seated in the same position is just not good for anybody.
Yeah.
But actually there's an entitlement, isn't there? Entitlement, wrong word. You know, your employers have to work with you and support you. So, you know, if you have got any physical or mental health issues, your employers need to support you.
Absolutely.
The difference it makes for me to be able to press my button and raise my desk up at any given moment and be able to stand up and still be able to work.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's a bit weird for people watching me on the screen as the desk goes up. I do try and warn people, but it is that change in movement, the change in the way that your body's aligned, because energy gets stuck as well, doesn't it?
Very definitely gets stuck. Yeah. Yes. I've just been saying that actually. Just today, I've had 4 clients, and 3 of them, I can recognize that 3 of them have had physical health difficulties that we can absolutely pin to emotional difficulties that they've had previously in their life, that we can look at and think, that's stuck energy. That's something that's kind of got stagnated somewhere. You've not shifted. You've not been able to shift for some reason.
And it's an interesting thing, and you might be able to shed more light onto this with all of your training, but how many times in my life where I've not listened to my mental health, my body has done something to make me, and then I recognize that there's been an issue with my mental health.
Yeah. Yes. And that's happened to me as well.
It's interesting. I was having a conversation with somebody this morning about the fact that actually they'd had a cold, but it absolutely floored them.
Yeah.
And they had to go to bed. And they were saying, it's just a cold. But what had gone on in their life for the previous 3 weeks makes you go, yeah, well, your body needed you to stop and rest.
Yeah.
So is that important for you as well, to notice how your body feels, to listen to your body, to hear what it's saying?
Yes. And I've been much better at that over the last year. I've recognized when things have not been quite right. And actually, what I've recognized the most is that it's always my throat chakra.
Ah, interesting.
Starts to close up, and I can feel that kind of, it's almost like somebody's got a fist in my, between my collarbone, you know, the little gap between your collarbone. I can almost feel it there. And sometimes I will get a sore throat as well.
So for those that don't know about throat chakra, could you explain that a bit more?
So, well, we've got essentially loads of chakras. They're all over. That's the sort of energy points, really.
Yeah.
And I've recognized, the reason why I've recognized my throat chakra, it's often because I'm not saying something. So your throat chakra,
that's associated with communication.
Yeah. And normally it's when I've not said something, or even when I'm not telling myself something. That, you know, that whole bad thing.
So you get that feeling, and then what do you do?
Then I will stop. So I'll have a day off, and I'll do something else. I'll sit and read a book, or I'll go out for an extra long walk with the dog. The woods where we live have got streams everywhere because it was quite an industrial area. So we've got like mill streams and things like that. I'll just go and sit on a rock next to the stream, and I can hear it going over the stones that are in the stream, and watch there's ducks out there at this time of year. So
if you've recognised that it's something that you needed to say, will you identify what it is you need to say and do something about that then?
Yes. So if it's, yes, I will. Yeah. And the first time I noticed it was the first time that I was off sick for a long period of time. And I know it was the second time. And I came back and actually was able to say something to the person that I needed to say it to, and just said, you need to back off. Part of the reason why I felt like this was because I felt bullied.
Wow. So it can be quite a big thing that's going on for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be, or it can be something quite small. It could be something as simple as, there's been a few times when it's been something as simple as, a good example would be, there was a few weeks where I was writing posts that I'd taken from AI.
So social media posts you're talking about.
Social media posts, yeah. That I'd taken from ChatGPT. That I hadn't copied and pasted, because I never do that, because it never speaks in my voice. But it wasn't what I wanted to say.
Right.
And as soon as I started, because I'm Jenny, you've read my posts, you know that I'm a potty mouth. You've heard me speak. I wasn't using my language. I wasn't using F-bombs left, right and centre, which I would normally do. I wasn't, saying it in my language.
Yeah. And so you got that feeling in your throat chakra because of the fact that actually you weren't actually being authentically yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. Incredible. Because it is an important thing. I don't know whether you'd agree that you are authentically yourself, because if you're not, you spend a whole life pleasing other people and not yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yes. And some people work as people please. Some people can do that. And that's their that is their purpose. But there's others of us that are here to actually not do that and shake things up a bit.
Yeah. And it's also interesting, isn't it? Because of the fact that actually when you're people pleasing this person in this way, and then you change your personality to people pleasing this way. And for me, that isn't about being authentically you, because of the fact that you're being a different person with each. So, when you talk about people who are people pleasing and it works for them, that's because they're doing acts of service and they're building their cup up by living in that way, but not pretending to be different people.
No.
Because so many of us actually spend a lot of our life being the person that you think somebody else wants to see.
Yes.
And for me, I can absolutely associate with that, because I spent a large proportion of my life doing that, but I don't do it anymore. And all I can say to people out there about people pleasing is the fact the moment you realize that you need to be yourself is the moment you have the people around you that recognize you for you.
For you, absolutely.
And they celebrate you for you. And that is such a beautiful moment, and it's such a lovely feeling going forward. It's a freeing feeling.
Absolutely. That was the word that was in my head. It's so freeing, isn't it? When you realize that you don't actually need anybody else to tell you how fantastic you are, that you can tell yourself that, and it doesn't matter if anybody else thinks that or not.
Makes such a big difference in your world, doesn't it? Because at that point, that means that you're okay purely and simply to be by yourself.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean to say you want to always be by yourself, but actually you're self-sufficient. You can look after yourself. You're okay. From that place onwards, you end up being an amazing person to other people then.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I know so many people are frightened of the word no. But the word no is it's a fantastic word, and it's freeing for everybody, because if you can say no to something, it's a clear guideline to the person that you say no to, that actually you just won't put up with that, or you don't want to do what they're asking you to do. And if you did say yes to them, you'd resent it, and they'd know. You didn't have to tell them, they would know.
But it's also interesting that there are people that just want you to say yes, and they don't really care how you feel.
No, that's true.
Because I've walked away from relationships where I've just gone, actually, you know what? No. And then they don't want anything to do with me because of the fact that I'm not doing what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's recognizing these different things, isn't it? And for me, I base that on, this has happened. How do I feel? And I now recognize various different emotions within me. And I know the ones that I want to feel, and those that if I'm in a situation where I'm feeling an energy or an emotion that I just don't want to feel, I walk away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's no point in sitting in that energy, is there?
No. No.
And that's another lesson from years of trying to make that work.
Yeah. And I think as women, we're, to go back to what you'd said earlier about, recognizing signs in your own body, as women, we are designed to have a period of rest during our period.
That is what happens.
No,
And
absolutely.
again, that's listening to your bodies, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
It's really listening to your bodies. And I think now we are human beings, not human doings.
Yeah.
We do have a world around us now that it's about doing.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize the more being, because that's the place where you find the true you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, people define success by doing and not by being. And sometimes actually you can find your success by being, because you can recognize where the success is and what it is. Because it's going to be different for everybody. It has to be your own definition.
And we grow and change, don't we, in our journey? And, I now find that I'm much more comfortable with myself, and I'm much more comfortable to be in a be situation. I am a big doer. I am a doer. That's part of my self-care is to allow myself to do certain things that make me feel good, but that I recognize when I need to stop the doing. But in the being is such a place of simplicity that now that, as you say, we're recognized for the doing, we're recognized for material wealth,
Yes.
all those sorts of things, aren't we? Whereas now for me, that's much simpler. I recognize myself for the fact that, I've been out for a walk today. I recognize myself because I've looked after myself.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really happy with that. And I don't need to be defined by anybody else's thought processes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you went through lots of changes in your life, and you come to the place now where I know you through social media and online presence and potty mouth and dancing around and all of that. But what is it you actually do now?
So I'm still working in the NHS 3 days a week. And what I do there is slightly different. But I work with, my true want and wish is for all women to be recognised. I've just written actually what my why is. And my why is for all women to feel as if they can ask for what they need and at least get some of them, if not all of it. I work with so many women. So I'm a psychotherapist. I've also got some coach training. I'm just about to do some NLP training as well.
Wow.
Yeah, NLP practitioner and coach training and timeline therapy training. So I work with women. Usually, most of the women that I see are perimenopausal, but I also work with women to help them recognize their cycle as well as the menstrual cycle. And I had PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Say that one again for me. Premenstrual
Dysphoric disorder, which basically means that you have the most severe mood swings that you can imagine. I had them for a few weeks, but then they go, when your period starts, they go.
Okay.
But there's other things as well. There's lots and lots of different symptoms, physical and emotional. But it's not recognised. So I recognise that things like endometriosis, PMDD, PCOS, and things like that, it was taking like 10 years for women to be diagnosed. And that is utter, I won't swear, but I may swear. Yes.
You can swear. We are at 18. But yeah.
I mean,
it is.
It can take between 7 and 10 years to be diagnosed. I mean, I was in my 30s.
What's that about, Jan? Why is that taking so long?
I think that there's still a misogynistic dismissal of women's health problems. It's dismissed as women's trouble or women's problems, I think. That's what I'm hearing anyway, that, that lots of women are still told, oh, it's just PMS. Well, I can tell you that PMDD is definitely not just PMS. And I'm sure people with endo will tell you the same thing. Or it's just the menopause. Well, there's no such thing as just whatever.
Yeah.
Just because mothers or grandmothers, their mothers and grandmothers just put up with it and shut up. Why should we still? Because we know more now. We've got more access to information. We know more because there's been more studies done. There's been more research done.
And it's a completely different world now where,
Absolutely.
as we are expected to all produce the same amount of work out of us, if you like.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you're running at less than half of your battery because you're struggling, that's not a ceiling that you can hit.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what's your work then? What is it you do to support people with that?
So there's quite a few things that I do. A lot of it is therapy. So a lot of it is looking at sort of where have you fitted into this pattern and how can we change that? So looking at sort of empowering yourself and finding your own voice, and knowing actually you've got a voice and that you can use that voice. And some of it is breaking down a lot of the conditioning that women have had over the years. Things like, I've got somebody at the moment that don't lose your temper. You must control yourself. You must, and actually what women sometimes want to do is actually F and Jeff all over the place like me. And sometimes actually that's needed. So it's helping women to realise.
It's a release, isn't it?
Yeah. What I do really is breaking down that conditioning to enable women to realise that they do have some power and that being able to use their power, it might just be opening their mouth and saying a few words. It might just be opening their mouth and saying no, but it's doing what they need to do to get what they want and what they need.
And actually, we do have various laws in place now.
Yeah.
That are there to support everybody in the workplace.
Yeah.
But it's identifying for yourself, isn't it, that actually you need that support.
Yeah.
Because we still are in a position whereby throughout all of our menstrual periods, menopause, perimenopause, we just keep going.
Yeah.
We just keep going. And I know myself, menopause was a time I actually thought I'd got early onset dementia.
And that is extremely common. Davina McCall talks about that quite a lot because she went and was tested. And I've heard so many other women who've said the same thing. It's no surprise that women tend to leave their jobs at the ages between 45 and 55 because that's perimenopausal age. And they get to the point where they think, I just can't do it anymore. I can't do it. I'm not as productive as I was. And there's no sort of concessions given. And actually, I think that one of the things that I want to do is raise awareness of the fact that, like you said, there are some laws out there. There are things that that employers can put in place, but they need to be told or asked.
And it is very difficult actually because, in particular in my area, there's a lot of small employers. They're not big employers. There's not lots of money floating around for support in this way, but it is still a legal right.
Yeah.
To be able to be supported in that way. I mean, and I know from my own experience, the doctors did not support me at all. They just kept telling me, don't be silly, you're not in menopause. You're not until the day the blood test came through and said, oh, you're through menopause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you are left to just get on with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just get on with it, know, and work your way through it the best you can. And, that shouldn't be the way. That
absolutely no.
We're not talking about people being, ultra sympathetic and, we're just talking about a valid concession here.
Yeah.
Because if any other illness, there would be a valid concession.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the other thing about it, I guess, the other thing about my work is looking at the perimenopause and menopause as being actually a transition for women. So it's a bit like going from being sort of prepubescent to actually starting to have your periods, but in reverse almost.
Yes.
You're kind of going the other way. And it's recognizing that we are allowed to get older and still be fabulous.
Yeah. Oh, I love being older. I absolutely love being older. It's the most amazing thing. I was talking to somebody today about, grey hairs, and I'm going, it's celebrating my grey hair. Thank you very much. But, I've always had very strong, dark hair, and it's going grey now. And I'm really okay with that because I just think each one of these grey hairs is part of my experience of life.
Absolutely.
It's part of who I am, and I'm celebrating it.
Yeah.
I mean, each to their own, but for me, I'm celebrating my grey hair.
Yeah.
And I'm quite happy with growing up. I'm doing lots of things to keep myself more mobile and those sorts of things, but I'm really happy with it's wisdom and it's experience. We don't celebrate that anymore. We do not celebrate the wisdom. It is the young is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in the West, we're kind of shown that, aren't we? So the older female characters, and it is older female characters on television programs, in films, even in radio plays and things like that, and books. They're the sort of the wizened old lady who's mild and meek and doesn't say boo to a goose and is just supporting with cups of tea and pieces of cake and stuff like that. And you can do that by all means. I do, I love baking. But I'm also not going to sit there in a corner and be meek and mild.
I think for me, it's come to a place now where I'm, my business is called Just Being Me. And that's exactly what I want to be. And one day that might be sitting in the corner and quite happily. Yeah. And another day that might be dancing around out in the streets.
Yeah.
And I just feel I am happily in a place now where I have identified who I authentically am. And I know that I'm still on a journey.
Yeah. That's the point, isn't it? And I guess that's part of my work as well, helping women recognize that it is a journey and that we will change. We're constantly changing, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be a problem. Change is good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we will put down below in all of the show notes how to get in contact with Jan, because I think that the conversation is much bigger. I'm hearing it much, much more about perimenopause now.
Yeah.
I think it's a really important conversation to be putting out there. So if you need any information, please have a look and get connected with Jan. She's all over Facebook. Everywhere I look, there's always Jan. Always in my notifications in the morning. Jan. So she's very good at her social media. So do jump in and go and look. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wish you all the luck for the future.
Thank you very much.
Are you feeling stuck? Do you want to be able to create a better conversation with yourself, but just don't know where to start? I offer a free 20-minute session to see where you want to be and how to get you there. Just click on the link below. Remember, it's free. Book your space. It could change your life. Thanks for listening today. If you'd like to know more, you can find all the links down below. Oh, and don't forget to press subscribe so you can catch the next one. See you soon.
Learning